Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to another extremely exciting Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants broadcast. I know we've got a lot of familiar faces in the crowd today, but if you are new to us, we are all about bringing conservation, adventure, and science into classrooms around the world, and you are catching us smack dab in the middle of our epic Ocean Week celebrations. Now, this is always our biggest week of the year. This year, we went above and beyond. We've got 21 broadcasts featuring everything from astronauts to cave divers, some of the coolest scientists and explorers on planet Earth. As many of you may know, all of those programs go to our YouTube channel, so you can check them out in 3 years, 3 weeks, whenever you're fancy. You can go and tune in to like 4,000 past broadcasts with some of the coolest people on planet Earth. But even amidst that incredible slate of people, I have been particularly excited about this broadcast for literally years, and I'm so excited that you're joining us today as we get to make it happen. Now, in March of 2022, I went to my local library. The National Geographic was there, and there was a diver looking straight at me right out of the magazine, and I picked up the story Into the Depths, and it was one of the best stories I've ever read in the history of National Geographic, and I got obsessed with Tara Roberts. Now, she has gone on to write an amazing book. She's on a tour for this right now. She's like right in the midst of going all around the world to talk about this. So we're so thrilled to have her about all of that. She's done an amazing podcast in conjunction with National Geographic. You can catch that lots of places. But most importantly, she's just an incredibly fantastic and humble person. And there are technical disciplines listed on her National Geographic site I particularly liked because it listed her as an adventurer, a journalist, and a humanist. And in 2025, if there's a better combo of 3 things to be than that, I can't think of it. So without further ado, to tell you her story, diving on slave shipwrecks and beyond as an amazing storyteller, Tara, thank you so much for being here in full snorkel gear. You look amazing. You sound amazing. It's such a thrill to have you. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Jesse. What an incredible intro. Thank you for that.
I get to be the hype person for the coolest people in the world. It's very easy to do my job because I get people like you coming on, and it's special every single time. So to that end, I'll zip it, and I'd love to hear a little bit about your story, what you do, how you got into this, why you're wearing such cool gear for our kids that may not know.
All right, perfect. Well, hi, everybody. I can't see you, but I am happy to be here and excited to talk to you today. I'm really excited to share more about my work. As Jesse said, I am a scuba diver, and I dive for ships that were a part of the transatlantic slave trade and that wrecked in the ocean almost 400 years ago. So I'm going to tell you a little more about my work. But first, I thought you might be interested in seeing some of the equipment that we dive with. So the first thing that I want to show you is, and I'm wearing it, I want to show you my snorkel and mask. The mask is what we wear to keep the water out of our eyes, and it allows us to see really clearly underwater. And the snorkel here is what helps us breathe. So if we're above the surface and we just want to put our faces in the water, this is what helps us to breathe. Now, I know that probably some of you have been snorkeling before, so probably some of you recognize this equipment and you've probably used it. Well, the amazing thing is that scuba divers use this equipment too. But we also use a few additional items that help us to stay underwater. So I thought I would also show you this vest, which is called our BCD. That stands for Buoyancy Control Device. And this helps us to not sink in the water. So if I push this button, where's it? This button right here, it helps to inflate the vest with air. And that's what helps us to not sink. I also have fins, and these are probably things that you guys have used before if there's anybody that's been snorkeling before. But the fins are what help us to get around in the water. So it helps us to kick with not a lot of effort. And finally, the most important equipment that a scuba diver has, which I don't have with me because it's a little too much to keep in your apartment, but we have tanks that are full of air, and we have a device called a regulator. So the tanks we attach to our vest, and they allow us to have air underwater. And then we strap the regulator, we put it in our mouths, and it's got hoses to it. So the hoses we attach to the vest, and then we put one in our mouths, and that's what allows us to breathe air and to put air into the vest. So there you have it. That's all the equipment that a
Super cool.
diver needs.
I found my own too, just in solidarity. I think we got to wear these together. It's very important. Now, snorkeling, I'm not very good at, but scuba diving, I find like absolute magic. So I love harping on this, and I love that you started with this because I always tell the classes when we do diving programs, you can start on the path to being a scuba diver at 8. And a lot of our kids in grade 3, 4 today, you fit that bill. If you're in the middle of a continent, if you're in Iowa or Saskatchewan, you can go become a scuba diver in quarries and pools with Patty Bubble Maker. It's just an amazing platform. I became an open water diver at like 25, so I waited way too long. Tara, when did you become a diver? When did you get started with all this? I'm really curious.
Oh, so that's the thing. You did it at 25. Some people do it at 8 or 10 or 12 or 16. I didn't do it until I was super old. I won't tell my age.
No, longer than 25.
7 years ago that I learned how to scuba dive.
So it's rare to shock me because I do a lot of programs, but given your like all you've done underwater in that time, the fact that it's only 7 years is unbelievable. You're like a living testament to the fact that you can start things at any age and end up being like the world global person that people turn to hear about it. Very, very cool. Good for you. Wow.
Yeah. The amazing thing is that I am from Atlanta, Georgia. I don't know if everyone knows where Atlanta is, but Atlanta is in the middle of the state of Georgia in the US, and it's landlocked. So we're not connected to the ocean at all. So I didn't know anything about the ocean. Now, I will admit that I like to swim. I like to swim in pools, and I started swimming at a young age, but I didn't know much about the ocean. It wasn't until it was literally 7 years ago that I saw a picture in a museum of a group of people who looked just like me in wetsuits on a boat. And I realized for the first time that scuba diving was something that I could do. I was so inspired by these people. They were mainly young women who, again, looked just like me. And so I was so inspired that I decided to join them. And you know what? By joining them, I have had an opportunity to finally meet the ocean and to have adventures. I was one of those really dreamy kids when I was your age. I used to read a lot of books about adventures, and I wanted to have them so much. I wanted to do something magical and something that was a big quest to help change the kingdom. I loved fantasy books like that, but I didn't know that the ocean was a place that I could have adventures. I didn't know that it was such a magical place. But the ocean is amazing. It's like a whole other world. There's just so much to discover there. So I'm wondering, Jesse, maybe you can help me out here, because I wonder if everybody would like to hear what it's like for me under the water.
I certainly want to hear anybody for you under the water. Well, we can show classes at any point. So Mrs. Brundage's class, if you guys ever want to be on camera, Mr. Hancock, I know it's just you at the thing, but we've got some of our live classes here. Madam Sylvie's got our camera turned off, but welcome in Ottawa, Georgetown. We've got classes again all over Canada and the US online. But Tara, if we want them to close our eyes and we'll begin and play something together. So here we are.
So what we're going to do, I want you to close your eyes. We're going to play a clip from my podcast, which is called Into the Depths, as Jesse mentioned earlier. And this podcast tells the journey of me traveling around the world with all the scuba divers to look for these wrecks. So there's no picture here. So it's great if you just close your eyes. And I want you to imagine that you're down there in the ocean with me. Imagine that you're right there beside me and we're diving together. All right, Jesse.
Let's do it.
Play the scene. Salt spray tickling my face. The motion of the boat as it skims across the surface. It's beating us toward adventure. Next to me in the boat are women and men, all in wetsuits, all ages. Afros and braids are flying in the wind. They all look invincible. And they've got these big smiles on their faces. Out there, ahead of us, is a ship that's been buried under the waves for over 300 years. ship like that once brought our ancestors to this side of the world.
Some incredible stories that these vessels have, but they're out of memory, out of mind. Why is that?
Mask on. I take one more look around, and then I tip over the side. I drop in. I love scuba diving. The way I feel like I'm in another universe, like I'm flying. I'm under the water, but here I can actually breathe. I look around through the beds of corals, the schools of fish, and I can see my companions gliding through the water. They're just as at home as I am.
I feel so free.
All right. Blue.
There we go. Wants to play again. There we go. It's not exciting. It just wants to loop.
All right. I want everyone to open their eyes. And I'm so curious. What did you see? Your imaginations.
YouTubers, if you guys want to chime in the chat too, we'd love to hear from you. We've got a bunch of our classes there, StreamYard classes. You can type in the chat. We can come to you live. Mr. Hancock, what did we see when we were joining Tara on a journey under the...
One of my students saw lionfish.
Cool. Very specific. I love it. Okay, if you think of anything else, you can let us know. What else we got in the chat? Madam Sylvie's class. We've got lionfish. We've got sharks. We've got coral you talked about. So a few of the creatures that are down there. I mean, personally, and I've gone scuba diving, it's that tip into the water. It's the splash around you. And so that's just, it's such a moment. It's one of the greatest moments you can have on planet Earth, is to do that. And so I hope our kids get the chance to go and dive themselves. We've got lots of fish, shark, blobfish. I love that blobfish, no matter what we're doing a broadcast on, you must know this. Blobfish will find its way into any talk. It's like black holes for space. We should just do a program called that, Black Holes and Blobfish, and just see how it does, because it would get like a bazillion kids. Any other YouTubers? Let's see. Joyful Discovery, Miss Cork. Oh, great. See, we're getting all sorts of emotions. Cool creatures. This is a very evocative minute and a half.
I love that. It sounds like you saw some colorful fish. You saw big fish. Sounds like you saw funny looking fish. Coral reefs. I wonder if anybody saw a giant turtle or a dolphin. I know
we got orca now. Orca, green ocean, deep water, clownfish. We've got bubbles. It's great.
I love it. I love it. That's fantastic. And I also just want to say, for the record, that the way that I'm wearing my mask and my snorkel is never what you're supposed to do as a scuba diver. This is actually when you put your snorkel or your mask on top of your head, it's a sign of distress. So I'm not in distress, but I just wanted to keep the mask out of my face. But don't wear it up here. You wear it down here.
I was going to call somebody, but I'm really glad you clarified. Thank you.
So I'm glad that you guys could see all the things in your imagination. And maybe some of you saw what I see when I dive. And that's the wreckage of ships, and specifically ships that traveled from Europe to Africa to the Americas in the 1600s and the 1700s. Many of those ships, just so you know, they didn't make it across the Atlantic Ocean. Some of them, of course, made it. Most of them made it, but some of them didn't. And those that didn't wrecked right there in the Atlantic Ocean. So the group that I follow works to find and document those ships. When the divers and I are on the bottom of the ocean and we're diving, we find pieces of these ships and we tell the stories of how the ships wrecked. We also try to tell and find the stories of the people who died in the wrecks. Those were people who were captured against their will. They were stolen from their homes in the interior of Africa. They were marched to the shores, often in chains, and then forced to board these boats that would take them far away from their loved ones, where they would be forced to work for no pay and never to return home again. So my group and I, we try to remember those who did not make it. as well as those who survived the journey but may have been forgotten. We help bring their stories back into memory, and we try to speak their names. Well, the truth is that we'll never know all of their names because there were close to 2 million of those Africans who were lost. And that's a lot of people. And most of the records about them were lost or never recorded too. But we still try to speak the names of those we can, or at least we speak the names of the ethnic groups that they came from, so that we can help people remember them. Remembering them is really important. You know, this work helped me to think about the people in my family who might have come over on those ships. I realized when I started to do this work that I didn't know the stories of my own ancestors. And so I started to get really curious about them. I wanted to know them. And so this work allowed me to be able to trace back to my great grandfather. I didn't know a lot about him, but wow, I found out he was an incredible person. I'm so glad that I know his story. And I'm wondering if any of you might be able to trace your families back the same way that I did.
Ooh.
Maybe some of you already know who your ancestors are. And ancestors are just the people who came before you. So I'm wondering, Jesse, maybe we do a little show of hands here.
Absolutely. We can
Yeah.
do this.
So
So,
I'm wondering, like, who in class
Yeah.
knows the name of their cousin? Like, if you know the name of your cousin, raise your hand.
there we go. We'll bring up our classes. What do we think? Cousins, yes. I know I have 2
Name
cousins.
your
Not very
cousin.
many. Okay.
Excellent. All right. Who knows the name of their aunt or their uncle?
All of them. Yeah.
All of them.
Hands galore. Everyone's got their hand up. Okay, good.
Okay. What about your grandparents?
Okay, grandparents. Yeah. Oh, Madam Sylvie's class knows everybody. They know all the people. That's a good sign. Way to go. Okay. Yeah.
All right, this was tougher now. What about the parents of your grandparents? Ooh, that was tougher.
I know 2 of, I
Oh
think,
my God, do I see like all the names right? All the
your
hands are
great
raised?
grandparents. Holy wow, you guys are
Holy
amazing.
moly.
And then we've got smaller ratios from some of our YouTube classes, but that's incredible. I know. Do you know all your great grandparents, Tara?
Well, yes. Actually, I do know my great grandparents.
Cool.
And I know this final one. This is as far back as I can go.
Yeah.
My great grandparents. How many of you can know the names of your great grandparents?
Okay, no one in
Yeah,
Mrs.
that's
Brendan's class. Madam Sylvie, if you guys are all putting your hands up, that would be amazing. But I certainly don't. I've never even heard. I don't know where they're from. I don't know their background. I know vaguely like Europe. That's fine. Miss Course class says we know some of our great grandparents from Scotland. So a country well known for incredible genealogies. That's very interesting. Okay, Miss Course class, way to go. So.
Wow.
Wow.
I think then that class wins. You
Yeah.
guys win. That's
Gold
as far
star.
as much of us can go. Now, if you weren't able to trace back, if you don't know the names of your ancestors, that's okay too. Even if you can just connect to your brother or your sister, or everybody had their hands raised for their cousins and their aunts and uncles. So if you can connect to them and you can tell their stories, that matters. That's really important for us to know the stories of our ancestors. I actually want to ask you to do something this week. Now, you don't have to do this, but I hope you will. Whichever person's name came to your mind, whether it was your cousin, your aunt, your uncle, whether it was your grandparent, your great-grandparent, if that person is still here with you, I want you to go to that person and ask them to share a story about themselves.
Beautiful.
And if you can't go to them, if that person is no longer here or accessible, I want you to ask someone in your life who knew that person to share a story about them. And then I want you to share that story with someone else. How does that sound?
Sounds beautiful.
Yeah?
On a personal note, one of my most impactful moments of my whole life, I asked my Oma, so my dad's mother, my grandmother, who lived through World War II, was in Germany when that was happening, her life story. It took me like 2 days of interviewing her, and it's one of the most impactful things I've ever done in my life. And so it's something that I never thought of when I was the age of today's students. But if you do that, if you connect with your family in that way, it's such a meaningful thing for you, and it's a meaningful thing for them, and it makes your life so much richer to do something like this. So
It really does. I think it makes the past come alive. And it makes the past much more interesting when you know that you have a connection to it. And it helps us see the humanity of those who came before us. So it's really, really important. I'm gonna leave you with a stat here, just so that you can also get the context of how big the past is and how much we often don't know about it. So why these stories really matter. There were 12,000 ships that participated in the transatlantic slave trade. 12,000 ships. They estimated that somewhere around 1,000 of those ships wrecked. But to date, less than 20 have been found and properly documented. So there are a lot of shipwrecks out there to be found, a lot of work to be done. I hope that some of you will maybe come diving with me one day. The ocean is such an amazing place to explore. And as Jesse said earlier, you can get your junior underwater scuba certification as young as 10 years old. And you can get your full underwater scuba certification as young as 15 years old. And the group that I follow, it's a group called Diving with a Purpose. Diving with a Purpose trains people in underwater archaeology mapping. So we learn how to go down to the bottom of the ocean. We've got measuring tape. We've got clipboards and pencils and paper. And we're down there drawing the wrecks of the ships. So Diving with a Purpose has a youth group called Youth Diving with a Purpose. And it starts training people as young as 16 years old. So maybe one day some of you will actually join me and we can dive these wrecks together. All right.
That's a beautiful place to end the presentation. We've already got tons of questions pouring in, which is beautiful. And so, again, your questions can take you on any part of this, whether it's Tara's journey, her book, some of the things we've talked about today, finding your own ancestry. I want to do a plug for we've got a mix of Canadian and American friends today. The most amazing museum I've been to in Canada ever, and I've been to a lot of museums, was Pier 21 in Halifax, which is the place that they most tell the story of people coming to Canada. The American equivalent, Ellis Island, is, of course, a very, very famous spot that you'll know. And so if you get the chance to go there, if you can trace your ancestry, and if people did come over on a ship and sort of set up a home in Canada and the US, I can't encourage you to go to one of these places enough. There's such special places in the world, and a great start. Yeah.
I love that. And you're making me want to share the museum where I saw this picture that completely changed my life. It was a museum in Washington, D.C. So if any of you have ever been to Washington, D.C., or if you ever go, there's a museum there called the National Museum of African American History and Culture. It's an incredible place. And it actually has artifacts from some of the ships that we have found as we've traveled and documented these ships around the world. So if you want to see any of that, go to that museum.
When I went to Washington, I was in high school, and that museum hadn't been built yet. It's the place I most want to go. And when it was opening, I actually wrote the director and got a letter back in the mail from them to say, come whenever you get a chance, which is so amazing. So it's a really, really special place. Washington's museums in general are, even as a Canadian, I've got to say, I don't think there's any better grouping of museums in the world than Washington, D.C. It's a really, really special spot. Oh, okay. There's so many questions coming in that I'm going to zip it. Mr. Hancock, if you want to lead us off with your first one, come on in Georgetown and take us away.
Perfect. So we had some questions about the shipwrecks. How do you draw conclusions? How do you know the shipwreck was possibly carrying slaves? How do you determine these things when you find them?
Yeah, that is a fantastic question. So the thing about these shipwrecks is that when they wreck on the ocean floor, they typically splinter. Most of the boats were made out of wood because they were built in the 1600s and 1700s. So it's not like you can just swim along under the ocean or under the water and come across a slave shipwreck. That likely will never happen. And that's because when these boats wreck, they splinter and the ocean often reclaims them. So it's a great question to ask, how do you actually find them? The work actually starts in the archives. So it starts with historians, and historians go through the archives. Surprisingly, there are tons of records about these wrecks. And that's because the transatlantic slave trade was business. It was big business. People made a lot of money off of these ships and off of the transportation of Africans across the Atlantic. And so a lot of the ships were actually insured. And you know what happens when, like, let's say you're in a car wreck and something happens. If your car is insured, you file a claim with the insurance company. So these boats did the exact same things. When the boats would wreck, the financial backers of the boats would file claims. And so the insurance companies would come and investigate. And the way that they would investigate is they would read the records of the captains and the crew on the boats. Sometimes they would call the people who survived in for questioning. There would be actual court cases and depositions where people gave firsthand accounts of what happened. And so these insurance companies would investigate the claims in order to pay out. So all of those records have been kept. So historians go through those records to find out what happened. And through those records, they can tell exactly where the wrecking event might have happened. And once they find that, then they send in a team. Often it's archaeologists, it's divers, and those teams, they start on the surface first. So they've got big equipment like side sonar scans or magnetometers, and those they use to sort of sweep the ocean, and they're looking for anomalies on the ocean floor because the ocean it's big. It's really hard to find stuff in the ocean. But even though that these boats were made out of wood, they might have metal nails that kept them together, or there might be other metal pieces like an anchor on the boat. So the equipment searches for metal anomalies on the ocean floor, and they go up and down stretches of the ocean in the area where historians think that the wrecking event happened. And they call this mowing the lawn. If you can imagine how you mow the lawn, like you go up one strip and then you turn around and you go down a strip right next to it. So that's what these boats do. They go up and down, and they're looking for these anomalies. And then once they find anomalies, they send in scuba divers to actually put eyes on the anomalies so they can see, what's really there. And they take pictures.
So you covered two things that I love. That's a beautiful answer. We actually have a person on a ship doing mowing the lawn this week for Ocean Week. So we've got another one in a couple of weeks. So we're mowing the lawn all the time at Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. But I love that you started with the records room, because when I was a boy, I watched things like National Treasure and all sorts of cool things. And it always starts with a bunch of people like poring over a big map going there. And they point. It's almost like X marks the spot pirate stuff. But it's for like actual treasure and real adventure. Anyway, thanks, Mr. Hancock, for a great first question. Mrs. Brundage's class, Madam Silly, we're coming to you back to back in a second. There's a great one from our YouTube channel. So Miss Cork, our Scottish great-great-grandparent class, they wanted to highlight where are the most shipwrecks been found so far. Is there like a set spot off any particular state, middle of the ocean? What's the deal?
Oh, that's a great question. So again, remember that they estimate, this is what historians estimate, that there's somewhere around 1,000 of these ships, and they wreck all over the world. The group that I've been following and telling stories about has done missions in Mozambique, which is a country in East Africa. They've done missions in South Africa, missions in Senegal, which is in West Africa. They've done missions in St. Croix, which is in the Caribbean, Costa Rica, which is Latin America, and they've done missions in the United States, in Florida and in Mississippi. And if you remember, I said that less than 20 of the potential 1,000 wrecks have been found.
Wow.
So there are not tons and tons of ships out there, but there are quite a few around the coast of Florida. So
Interesting.
that's where, yeah, there are 2 there, and then there's 1 in Alabama. So quite a few in the US. But we estimate and imagine that they have wrecked all over the world. Here's another tiny stat for you. They also estimate that somewhere around 70 to 90 nations participated or were impacted by the transatlantic slave trade. 70 to 90 nations. So I've only named a couple of nations there. So I can imagine that there are ships all over the world that we just haven't had a chance to find.
I will say, if you ever have Diving with a Purpose on one of those ships off Mozambique and they want to do a live broadcast as they go diving in, we do those sort of things all the time. We'd love to partner, just so you know, just a plug for the day. I'm going to try and find it for our classes, because the single best article I've ever read on the slave trade across the Atlantic was also in National Geographic, and it showed where people went. I learned so much from that article, and I'm going to try and find it for our classes to follow along with the story, because it's an important story in the history of humanity. So thank you for that.
Yeah, there's also a great website. It's the Transatlantic Slave Trade Database.
Okay.
I believe it's slavevoyages.org.
Okay.
If anybody is interested in seeing, they have mapped all 12,000 ships that participated in the trade. And then they have this super cool interactive map that's it shows the Atlantic Ocean. So you see Africa, you see Europe, and you see the Americas. And then the map starts it's the late 1400s. And you can see one ship going across. And then it shows 1401, and maybe you see 2 ships going across. And then it shows 1450, and maybe you see, I'm making the numbers up, so don't quote me on this, but let's just imagine it's 1450, and then you see 30 ships going across, and then it's 1525, and then it's 100 ships going across, and you can see each individual ship going across, and the numbers getting bigger and bigger and bigger as the time moves forward. It's an incredible
resource. I just pulled it up. It's so good. Okay, so we'll make sure, again, every class has that link at the end of the broadcast. We're going to go to Mrs. Brundage's class. So Ottawa, if you want to come in and give us a question, Madam Sylvie, you're next. So feel free to flick on your mic. Take us away, guys. Hey.
Come on, give me a question. They're very quiet today. They just got in from gym.
We can come back in a second. You just relax from gym.
Okay, give us a minute.
Seconds. Okay, we'll be back in a sec. Madam Sylvie's class, if you want to flick on your mic, we can come to you for a question. We've got some YouTuber ones as well. So lots of stuff. In fact, we'll take one from YouTube while we're waiting. Do the wrecks ever feel scary, Tara?
Well, I don't know if I would use the word scary. Just remember that, again, these wrecks are not in the shape of a ship anymore. So it's not when they found the Titanic and you've got this whole ship and you could go in and out of rooms and see exactly what the ship looked like. With these wrecks, it's really pieces of the wreck that we're finding on the floor. So we might see wood over here that's now encased with coral, or we might see pipes, or we might see the anchor, or we might see objects that were on the ship, but they are scattered all over the ocean floor. So I don't think it's necessarily scary to encounter the wrecks, but I do think it's impactful, because we are finding actual history that happened. And a lot of this history has some tragedy attached to it. So sometimes there's a feeling of sadness when you encounter the wrecks. Sometimes there's a feeling of anger because you know what happened on those ships and it wasn't very nice. And then sometimes, honestly, and this is what I feel most of the time when I'm diving, and this might be surprising to people, I feel a lot of joy when I am down there. I honestly feel joy. And it's really because I can say to those ancestors, and they estimate that somewhere around 1.8 million Africans lost their lives in the crossing from Africa to the Americas. You got 1.8 million people who died in the ocean. But what's amazing and what brings me joy is that I can say to those ancestors that I haven't forgotten about you and that I'm doing all that I can to help bring your stories up from the bottom of the ocean and back into memory. And that to me feels like incredible work. It makes me feel proud and really excited and deeply joyful to be able to bring this history back into memory.
One thing that I love with getting to talk with scientists and storytellers of all stripes around the world is that this feeling is a unifier of pretty much everybody. Paleontologists, the first to find that fossil in 300 million years. Biologists go into the rainforest to find a new species. No one's ever described that species before. And with this, it must be doubly so because of the human history, the linkage to your own culture. It's the draw for everyone to have come today to this program because it's such a special story. It's the reason why your book is so successful and you're being lauded all over the world, and for good reason, because you do such a beautiful job of bringing this to light. And so thank you very much for that beautiful answer, Tara. Time flies and you're having fun. We're going to do one more question from both our live classes. So Mrs. Brundage's class will come to you first. Madam Sylvie will wrap up with you. And then don't worry, kids, I'm going to pass along 1 bazillion, it's an actual figure, resources to keep learning going when we're done. But come on back in Ottawa and take us away.
Okay, our grade 7s are a little camera shy, but they've given me some questions. One was, we have 3 ones that are kind of connected. So They were interested if you've seen the Titanic wreck. Second, if you have any pictures of any of your expeditions. And what was the third one? Oh yeah, if there was any close calls when you were down exploring, is it a dangerous situation?
Cool, great questions.
Got it. Yes, great questions. So no, I have not dived the Titanic, but I will say that Bob Ballard, he is a scuba diver and he's another National Geographic Explorer, is the person who found the Titanic. And I've had a chance to hang out and actually dance with Bob Ballard. So I feel like I sort of touched the Titanic, through Bob. All right, that was the first question. The second question was...
Our final one is danger on any wrecks, which you sort of talked about a little bit, but have you encountered any creatures down in the bottom of the ocean that might have been a challenge to you as maybe a dangerous situation or no?
Oh my God. Yes. I encountered not a lionfish, but a triggerfish. And triggerfish are little, like they're not very big. They're like tiny little fish. They're super colorful and they have an appendage on their heads that sort of looks like a trigger. So that's why they're called triggerfish. But the triggerfish, I met it in Sri Lanka when I was diving. This is when I was just training and learning how to dive. And it actually attacked me and bit a little piece of my finger.
No.
Oh,
that's
no.
Kind of bad.
That's bad. But I feel like, most scuba divers have some kind of encounter. So I felt when it happened, I was like, I'm a true scuba diver now.
Yeah. The moment you lose a bit of finger, you know that you're in the community now. You're set.
Yes.
You've paid your dues. And then Mrs. Brundage, sorry, what was the third one?
They wanted to know if you had any pictures of any of your expeditions.
Yeah,
there are pictures online. We didn't queue up any, but there's some pictures.
We've got her website's got a ton. Her Instagram page has a lot. We're going to pass along the article, Diving with a Purpose, as well, Into the Depths as a podcast. Like, there's lots of ways of seeing Tara at work under the water. And again, that cover of National Geographic, make sure you check it out because it's a really, really special cover. So we'll get those to you. We promise. This is a really neat storytelling venture today. So I think it was fun to do something a little bit different than a PowerPoint. Madam Sylvie, we'll wrap up with you with one final question. And then, as you all know, at the end, we're going to bring everybody on to say a big thank you and farewell. So do stick around, but come on in and take us away. Hey.
Hello. We have a couple of questions.
Go for it.
We're not so camera shy in grade 4.
Perfect.
Have you ever been in a coral reef before?
Coral reef. And if you have a second one, you can ask it now as well.
No, I don't.
No,
Okay, Penny, you got your second question.
come on up. Coral reef.
Okay, have you ever seen a coral reef before? Question 2.
What's the biggest ship you've seen?
Ooh.
Okay. So the first question, have I dived on a coral reef? The answer is yes. Coral reefs are amazing. I don't know if you knew this, but they are alive. So they're actual creatures, and then creatures live on them. So it is amazing to dive a coral reef. They're just full of such incredible examples of marine life on the bottom of the ocean. And unfortunately, a lot of our coral reefs are in danger. So many of them are dying, but there is work that is happening around the world, which is so exciting, with conservationists that are planting and trying to preserve these reefs. So I hope that one day you will get a chance to dive on them. And I hope that we are continuing to preserve them, because they also help provide the oxygen that we need to live on this planet. So
we cover a lot of those stories too. Like, we bring on coral conservationists all the time here. The Coral Resilience Lab in Hawaii joined us a few months back. They're incredible. We got some coral stuff happening this week for Ocean Week. So I'm really glad we got that question. And then your biggest ship you've been on?
Well, again, because the ships are often not intact, there's not a ship per se, but I will say that there's one ship that we have encountered that is intact, and that is so unusual. It was a shipwreck that was found in Mobile, Alabama, which is a state in the southern part of the United States. And this is a city that sits right on the Gulf of Mexico. And there's a river that takes you to the Gulf, and the river is called the Mobile River. So this particular wreck, Clotilda, happened in the Mobile River. Most of the other wrecks that I've mentioned happened in the ocean. You know, the ocean is a salty place. And so, again, wood doesn't do well in salt. But the Mobile River is, instead of a salty place, it's a muddy place. So instead of the boat disintegrating like it does in the ocean, the mud served to preserve the wreck. So the Clotilda is the only wreck that we found that is intact. So we can see exactly what this wreck was. And it is in complete, togetherness for us to document and to explore it. And what we've done is we've been bringing up parts of it. There's still a conversation around what will we bring up, what will we leave down. But what they've done is they've been able to measure the cargo hold of this wreck. So they have the exact dimensions, and they were able to replicate that on shore so that we could see the exact dimensions of the cargo hold. And that's where they kept most of the people. And unfortunately, it was a pretty small place. So it was pretty tight for the people that were in it. But at least we know this information now. Like, we could actually see it and document it.
There's a spectacular article on the Clotilda from the Smithsonian that I've put in the chat, full StreamYard and YouTube, so you can check that out. I'll be sure to pass that along in an email at the end. It's an incredible, incredible wreck. There's so much to explore and discover on it. Wow. Tara, we could talk all day long. We've got more questions we could possibly take in one broadcast, but you've got to go talk about your book soon too, and do all sorts of other great storytelling adventures. So before we bring in our two classes, Mrs. Selby and Mrs. Brundage's class, and say a big thank you and farewell, and our YouTube class has joined us for the same, is there any last message you want to leave us with today about your incredible work before we say goodbye?
I'll just say that storytelling is important, and everybody is a storyteller. So I hope you guys are inspired to maybe learn a little bit more about your own families and to help share stories of some of your ancestors. It's really important.
No better message than that, and a totally unique one in the midst of our big Ocean Week celebrations. Tara, thank you so much for joining us. Your passion, your expertise, it's been well worth the wait of a few years to have you on the broadcast, and you're welcome back anytime. As we do to end every broadcast, I'm going to bring in our class to say thank you and farewell. If you are on YouTube and you want to scream and yell and annoy the principal, you have Tara and I's permission to do that. So we're going to bring you guys in. Thank you so much, everybody, and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Bye.